All right, my friend Mike Clay is here. Of course, Mike, on ESPN.com every single week, you write the wide receiver cornerback matchups column. Who's got a good matchup, who doesn't? So you're here to give us a few this week. And let's start in Arizona with Larry Fitzgerald. Good matchup, bad matchup? What's going on with Fitz?
Yeah, great matchup for Fitz here in week number 1. If you have him, you got to fire him up. He goes up against Detroit here. Quandre Diggs is the slot corner for them, and last year he gave up a catch rate over 80%. In fact, the Lions gave up the second most fantasy points to the slot last season. So you bring in Larry Fitzgerald. Last year lined up inside 63% of the time and actually had 63 catches out of the slot. That was second most in the NFL. So you got to love that matchup. He's a wide receiver 1 for me this week.
So a first ballot Hall of Famer going against a guy that struggles in slot coverage?
That'll work.
Yeah, that will actually work. I also like Carson Palmer as a streamer quite a bit as well, somebody to consider for DFS, Larry Fitzgerald. All right, Sammy Watkins has been much maligned in the fantasy community, obviously, going from Buffalo now to L.A. with Jared Goff. He struggled to stay on the field healthy-wise, but appears ready to go in week 1. Good matchup or bad matchup?
It's a great matchup, and Vontae Davis is not playing in this game. He actually struggled last season, and he's going to be out. They're also without Clayton Geathers. He's their box safety. He's going to be missing some time this season. So you look at this Colts defense, it's bad enough the way it is, but who's Watkins going to be going up against on the perimeter? Quincy Wilson, second-round rookie. Rashawn Melvin, who's been around since 2013, undrafted. He's not very good, so it's all systems go. And by the way, we talked about him as having a tough schedule this year, but it's going to be good out of the gate at the very minimum.
No question about it, and certainly it doesn't seem fair that they have to face off against Sammy Watkins. And I think people are going to be very surprised at the Rams, certainly in this game. I actually think Goff is a decent streamer. If you're sitting there like, what do I do without Winston, and you're in a deeper league, I actually think Jared Goff could be interesting this weekend, and that's one of the reasons why, because of Sammy Watkins. All right, let's talk about some big-name guys that maybe don't have great matchups here. Talk to me about Michael Thomas. You're not loving this matchup.
Yeah, they get rid of Brandon Cooks, so you're all excited for Michael Thomas, right? Well, not so much. This Saints offense, we know traditionally has struggled a little bit more so than they have in the Superdome. They're going all the way up to Minnesota. They allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers last season. And Michael Thomas, he's going to be shadowed by Xavier Rhodes, one of the best shadow corners in the NFL. And you might say, well, maybe he'll go into the slot and they'll get him away from Rhodes once in a while. He lined up outside 87% of the time last year, so that's not good. I really think this is a great opportunity to look at Ted Ginn on the other side or Brandon Coleman, who's 6'6" in the slot. I mean, talk about touchdown opportunities for this guy. I think he's a great guy to look at maybe in like a DFS tournament setting. Yeah,
Coleman will be dirt cheap as well. And actually, Colby Fleener, who's been sort of left for dead fantasy-wise, we could see a resurgence from Colby Fleener out of the tight end spot. But you're still starting Michael Thomas. We want to be clear here. Just maybe lower expectations for him. Maybe you're not playing him in a cash game in DFS for that example. And then finally, Dez Bryant. Dez seems to have struggled last year against the Giants. Do you think he struggles again on Sunday?
I think he does. You look at his production last season, he had problems. 84 routes he ran against the Giants last season, 14 targets, 2 catches for 18 yards and no touchdowns. That is brutal, and most of that came against Janoris Jenkins. And again, about a quarter of his routes will come from the slot, and he'll be off at Jenkins, but he'll get Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who's terrific, one of the better slot corners in the NFL. So it's a really rough go for Dez here in week 1. And again, another guy we talked about, tough schedule all season long.
Obviously, you're still starting Dez Bryant on Sunday, but you have to be a little bit concerned, not just on Sunday, but for the rest of the season when you look at that schedule. I know this is something you harped on throughout the preseason. Looks like if you're a Dez Bryant owner, it's a little bit of bad news.
Definitely some bad news.
Oh, did somebody say bad news? Hey, everybody, it's me, the bearer of bad news. Get it? I'm a bear. I bring bad news. Hey, Clay, why are you doing my job, delivering all the bad news? Why don't you stick to your job, which is molding terrible television? Oh, I'm sorry. That's Barry's job. Buzzing. Later.
What just happened?
Basic cable history, Mike. Basic cable history.